And welcome, everybody, to another edition of Last Word on Sports Media Daily Podcast. It's Friday. I'm Mike Gill. We've got plenty to get into today, so we'll set the scene before. Like, rate, review, and subscribe to the Last Word on Sports Media Podcast, which you can get on all podcasting platforms. And, of course, we got all the latest news on sports media ratings, news, transactions. We did a lot of conversation during the week about the ESPN TNT swap for Inside the NBA. Check out my conversation with Michael McCarthy from Front Office Sports. That was on Wednesday's edition of the Daily Podcast, but really good information from him on that, the Netflix debacle, and some other things. Go check that out. We had Joe Flint from the Wall Street Journal on Tuesday's podcast who broke the news about the trade. Go back and check that out as well on this feed. Last Word on Sports Media. The daily podcast drops in the midday, generally, sometime right after noon, 1, 2 o'clock for your commute home from work, and we'll give you a couple quick hitters here. So let's get into a couple of quick hitters. The first one on my list today, is it too much Jason Kelce? Well, they call it Late Night with Jason Kelce is coming January 3rd, 2025 to ESPN. This is going to be a Jason Kelce late night television show. It will be 5 episodes on Friday nights at 1 a.m., 1 hour long, and it will be 5 episodes from January 3rd through the NFL playoffs. They'll have guests, music, and comedy acts on the show, similar to a late-night television show. Johnny Carson, Jay Leno, David Letterman, that type of variety show. It will be filmed in front of a live studio audience in Philadelphia. The tickets will be free, and they will be available starting in December. You can pick those up. They'll be filming at Union Transfer in Philadelphia. That will be recorded on Friday sometime in the evening, and then it will air on ESPN television at 1 a.m. After it airs, it will be available on all ESPN platforms, ESPN Plus, ESPN YouTube, and a variety of other social media outlets. They call it Late Night with Jason Kelce. My thoughts is, hey, why not? 1 o'clock in the morning, what else is going on, I guess. Now, listen, if you're a fan of the 1 a.m. live Sports Center and you're wanting to get those West Coast or all whatever type of stuff, you might not like it. You might be someone that thinks it too much Jason Kelce. I think they've done a better job of kind of like only keeping him to the Monday night thing and they haven't really, overexposed him since early in the season when they had him out there. He did get into a confrontation with a heckler, I guess. He was doing a filming, I guess, at the Jimmy Kimmel show to announce this whole thing. Man, and this guy was letting Kelce have it. Very good restraint by Kelce, but he did give in to that. He signed the autograph for the guy. He tried to flame out, the fire there, and great restraint by Kelce, who we saw with the Penn State thing a little while back. So Kelce, 2 points for him. But the show, minimal interest from me. I can understand why they're doing it. Don't have a big problem with them taking a shot. I like the fact that Kelce hasn't been overexposed recently. So that starts January 3rd, 2025. They call it Late Night with Jason Kelce. In addition, let's go over to some more ESPN news. ABC, ESPN, ESPN Plus for the first time ever, Christmas Day. The games will be on Disney Plus. I don't know what that means for people out there. It doesn't mean anything to me. I don't have Disney Plus, but I imagine that if you are a Disney Plus subscriber, I don't know why you wouldn't have ABC, ESPN, or ESPN Plus, but if you have Disney Plus, you can watch all the NBA games, all 5 Christmas Day games on Disney Plus. And, this is the first foray into ESPN going to their direct-to-consumer platform that we'll see sometime probably in 2025. Speaking of ESPN, they announced that Around the Horn will air its final episode in the summer of 2025. It will end a 23-year run. I can honestly say I don't know that I've ever seen an episode of Around the Horn. I've seen the show, but I don't know that I've ever sat and watched the whole thing. Now, part of that is my radio show is on while that show is on. So I never get the chance to really, but even when I've been on vacation or having a day off or whatever, in 23 years, I don't think I've ever seen the show from start to finish. I will say, I liked the concept of the show when it was announced. From what I've seen of that show, very minimal I have seen of that show, I never really liked it. In terms of, I thought it was a little hokey. I mean, just arbitrarily handing out points. It didn't do much for me. The concept that I thought they were going to have was Max Kellerman was the original host, and that Max would put the topics on the table, and there would be 4 different time zones, and you would kind of get that time zone's take on that topic. You know, what is the West Coast think about this story? What does the Midwest think about this story? What does the Northeast think about this story? What does the South think about this story? And that those 4 very different areas of the country had someone debating those topics. Maybe this is a better show, by the way, for ESPN, but that's what I really thought this was going to be. Instead, it turned into this arbitrary point system. And quite frankly, you know, over the years, I think it was more clownish. Some of the participants, I didn't really take them all that serious. Now, listen, it was supposed to be for entertainment, fine. But I think they could have made it an informative and entertaining show at the beginning. Instead, so I'm not going to be overly sad at the end of this, but I understand it was part of that whole block with PTI. Some people liked it. I've never really seen it enough to really give. But what I have seen, like I said, I've seen the show, but I don't think I've ever sat down from start to finish and watched the full half hour of that show, mainly because I just thought it was a little hokey. So, but the people involved in the show, I'm sure, a lot of talented people. I like Tony Reali as the host of the show. But I think they could have come up with a better concept, and hopefully they do, to replace it. Let's go to, how about our first flex, Thursday night football style. Week 16, Browns and Bengals is out. Broncos and Chargers is in. The first flex for Thursday night football on Amazon. I think Amazon has to give like 4 weeks notice. They have like a very restrictive flex thing here. And they will flex out Browns-Bengals. Now, the Browns just played last night in that snow game against Pittsburgh and won that game, but they are really out of the playoff race. So week 16, Broncos-Chargers should be a more high-profile playoff type of game. So, okay, I don't know what other games were involved in a possible flex in that situation. If you're taking a look at what week 16 brings it to, but you never know, like, which teams can be flexed in, who can't be, who's already been flexed. Who's played so many primetime games, what networks are willing to give something up. So there's Saturday games that week, so those games can't be touched. That's Pittsburgh, Baltimore, Houston, Kansas City. And then you take a look at what other games are possibly available to you. What else did you got there? You've got Detroit, Chicago. You've got Philadelphia, Washington. They were on Thursday Night Football earlier this year, so they're not going to get flexed to Thursday Night Football again, although I think Thursday Night Football would take that game back again. So really, this is the only game that you could even think about. Maybe San Francisco, Miami. That's a 425 CBS game. By the way, the Sunday Night Football that week, that stinks. Tampa Bay, Dallas. Now, on that note, I will say Burke Magnus was on Jimmy Traina, the Sports Illustrated Sports Media podcast with Jimmy Traina, and I encourage everybody to go listen to Burke. And Jimmy did a great job with that conversation with Burke, and one of the things out of that conversation was Burke Magnus basically admitted that they will not flex out Dallas Cowboy games. I believe, and I would encourage you to go listen, I believe one of the things he said is the NFL makes the ultimate decision on the flex, but the network can suggest, hey, we want to get rid of this game. What do you guys think? But he basically said he cannot envision a scenario where they would get rid of a Dallas Cowboys game. Also, a couple quick hits. I want to give Jimmy Traina a hat tip for some of these topics. Burke Magnus did talk about their lead NBA booth for ESPN. He said it doesn't have to be a 3-person booth, but they're not going to make a decision on that. Number one. Number two, Hubie Brown. Jimmy asked, would Hubie Brown be considered to call an NBA Finals this year? Why not give him a chance to call the NBA Finals? And Burke said they're not considering that, but he did say this is his last season, and he'll call one final game before retiring, and they're going to do something nice for him. I was always a big fan of Hubie Brown, and I appreciate that conversation with Jimmy and Burke. I encourage people who are watching this podcast to go listen to Jimmy Traina, and he has a YouTube version of his podcast if you're listening to the audio form of this, or if you're watching on the YouTube channel. Jimmy also has one, and I like to give a hat tip to those guys because I think everybody in the sports media podcasting field does a really good job. I try to listen to all of the podcasts possible out there and, give everybody their praise because I think everybody does a really good job in this field. Very entertaining stuff. If you're into this niche topic that we call sports media, sports business, if you will, check those people out. Okay, the TNT NBA Cup coverage of the Celtics Cavs, $1.9 million, up 79% versus last year. The Cup coverage peaked at $2.7 million. Their TNT NBA Cup audience is up 34% versus last year. I don't know what that means. Does it mean that the NBA Cup is catching on, that it's gaining more popularity? I, quite frankly, couldn't care less about the NBA Cup. I don't know why anybody would. That's on you. If you like it, proud of you. It's not doing anything for me. I think a Cavs-Celtics game probably gets 1.9 million viewers. Without being an NBA Cup game, you got the defending champions playing an undefeated team. Is the NBA Cup the reason more people came in? We'll see. I know TNT is pumping up the playoff schedule or whatever they're calling it, not the playoffs, but the knockout round. That's coming up as well. All right, so there's a couple of topics for you. I do encourage you to go back to check out my conversation with Michael McCarthy from Front Office Sports. That was on Wednesday's Last Word on Sports Media. And if you're watching on YouTube, it is on my YouTube page at Mike Gill Show. Follow me on the X platform and on Blue Sky at Mike Gill Show. The one thing I would say, some people, we had a little bit of a conversation about this on the daily podcast, maybe on Friday or Monday. Maybe not Monday because I didn't do the Monday one. Yeah, I was on Monday, actually, with TJ. We did a quick one. But I will say for people with the Blue Sky, why Blue Sky? For me so far, and the reason that I went to Blue Sky, and I also am on X, I'm not leaving X or anything to that. I believe the engagement on Blue Sky is much more just people who are sports fans. They like sports. They want to have conversation. It is also more engaging when I post a link to a story. They are not suppressing links to work. So I write articles for my radio station website. More people are clicking on it on Blue Sky than they are from X, and I have about 4,000 less followers on Blue Sky than I have X. It is getting seen by the small amount of followers that I have. It is getting seen by those people. The followers I have on X are not seeing my links, and therefore they're not clicking on them. So that is why I made the move to Blue Sky, and I would ask if you can follow me on Blue Sky at Mike Gill Show. I think if you're a sports fan, you will have a much more enjoyable experience. We're trying to build up the followers on that side just so you guys can keep up with Last Word on Sports Media, the radio show, and so much more. All right, that'll do it for me. Hope everybody has a great weekend. Snow game last night, Al Michaels, Kirk Herbstreit. They had fun with the game. It's always fun to watch a little snow game. So we'll do more on that. Monday, we're back with TJ has the Last Word on Sports Media Daily. We'll have the long-form podcast on Tuesday. And don't forget, like, rate, review, and subscribe, everybody. This is the Last Word on Sports Media Podcast. I'm Mike Hill.